Ladies and gentlemen, welcome this evening to a bunch of old guys and one not quite as old guy talking about stuff that might be gear related or something else related. Bill said that if I do the intro, it sounds cool, so that's why you got it. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey,
Scott.
What's up with everybody else?
We didn't introduce you yet, but I'll say hey to you anyway.
Yeah, right?
Hilarious.
So wait, no, that's what's the other intro thing about what this is?
Wait, oh yeah, this is a thing that it could be a YouTube thing or a podcast thing or something thing, but we talk about things that are usually music related, but probably not. And Bill will probably tell some story about something that's unrelated to music, but that's okay too.
Oh, absolutely,
and
every time.
Also, we have a special guest today, and I already said hi to him, but Bill, do you want to introduce our special guest?
Yeah, we'll introduce our special guest. So as we've talked to other people, we've had people on the show and everything, the same name keeps coming up. And that is Quint Randall, who is really responsible for pretty much all of this at Root. So we decided to have him on as a guest. Hello, Quint. How you doing?
Very good. How are you all doing? How are you, Bill, and everybody?
Wait, would you say Quint is like the grandfather of this?
Quint is what?
I said, would you say he's like the grandfather of this? Because you said it all stemmed from him. So.
Ouch. Yeah, because actually Quint is just slightly older than me. So I am not the oldest guy. I wasn't the oldest guy last week either, which was kind of cool because Riley's a few years older than me.
But I've always been the youngest.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not going to say the things that are going through my head right now because we are trying to keep this youth friendly. Although with one of those songs last week, we probably blew that, right?
I can't even remember.
I believe we played last time.
Yes,
Bill,
that's
you're
part of
supposed
being
to
an
give
old
me Quint
guy.
an intro. You said, oh.
Yeah, right? As we forget stuff. Okay, so before we get into, this is just a real short intro. We're going to, be talking to Quint a bunch because he's had a really interesting career in and out of music, but mostly associated with different musical things over a really long period of time. I met Quint, Lord in heaven, God, we are so old. I met Quint probably in 76?
Something like that.
We played in competing bands on the same top 40 circuit.
Yes.
So we probably hated each other on some level.
Oh, yes.
And I ended up going to work for him at the original Gig magazine. And in the
Bible.
Yeah, every time
The
we
best
say Gig
hire ever
magazine,
made.
Scott says the Bible.
Yeah, right.
That was. I swear to God, that was the Bible for so many people, man.
Thank you. It was awesome.
So there we go. So we're going to talk to Quint about a ton of different stuff, and Scott will say the Bible a lot today. But we didn't tell you we're going to do this, but we do this with all our guests, and so you haven't even had time to prepare. So tell us about the top 3 albums that you were listening to that made you go, oh yeah, this band thing is kind of what I want to do.
Hey, real quick, Bill, you remembered our questions. I totally spaced those today. Good job.
I remembered, yeah. Last time you had to remind me.
I'm going to change it a little bit because I'm going to say several things. First of all, basically based on the influence of my older brothers, the Beatles. I don't know that I could name an album, just because they all merged together, but it would be a combination of the Beatles and then the early Eagles albums. Like, in fact, I dug that up recently. What is that? The song, Take It to the Limit One More Time, my memory's going, but that album, Old 50, I think Old 55 was on that album,
the On the Border album.
Right,
that was actually one of my favorite
picks
when we did this show. Yeah,
that's what I was looking at. And then the other thing I would say is is being in the back of my parents, in the way back in my parents' country squire. Now, I do have to add that my older brothers were musicians. My oldest brother was a musician and had a band. We had bands in our garage, from the time I was 7, or 8. And so I always saw that. But the other piece of the puzzle was story songs. Even like Frida Payne's Band of Gold.
Great song.
Ringo, by good old, what's the actor's name? Ringo. Come on. Help me out here. Lauren Green. He did it.
This was before my time.
Yeah, it's way before your time. So the story songs, and this is like pre-Harry Chapin, pre-7, just prior to that pre-era, even the Beatles, Eleanor Rigby, there was something about story songs that just fascinated me. And so I would say those are the things that kind of triggered, combined with watching my older brother, those were the things that triggered my interest in music. And my parents, even though they were not musical, I found out years later that my mother's brothers had a big band in Salt Lake City back in the 40s. So unbeknownst to us, there is some musical heritage in our family.
That's really cool. And the funny thing is, when we did that we did a whole show where we all talked about the albums, and Tim's number 1, was it your number 1 or your number 2? I don't remember, but it was one of the Beatles, the blue greatest hits, not the red greatest hits.
Yeah, but I only had the red greatest hits on vinyl, so I used that as my example.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the blue.
Right.
Yes, that was my number 1, I believe. That's correct.
And On the Border was one of mine. I mean, what a great record. I mean, I think all of us working that circuit learned or made an attempt to do Best of My Love, and back then, because it was such an enormo hit, and I can say I learned how to sing vocal harmony from that record more than anything else.
Unlike you and Tim, and I don't know about Scott, but I do not read music. I took piano lessons, and it was actually a session player that my mother found who really just taught like chord theory, and I didn't even get that. And so, I've never really. I play with some really good musicians like Nashville Types and people that are, and I'm like way out of my league when it comes to, music theory. So.
I do the chord chart
for
thing.
what it's worth, Bill turned me on to the YouTube channel for Rick Beato. I'm shouting out something that's popular here, and I just bought his like digital version of his music theory book because I'm trying to finally learn that stuff, and it's so over my head.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go back to not knowing anything.
I wish I knew that stuff. That stuff's like Greek to me.
It is like
I
Greek
get
to
the
me.
basics, but.
I mean, granted, I can, maybe look at a few notes, but to me, it's like so like 4-dimensional. I don't even understand how people look at music and read it and then translate it into performing.
I can't read like actual transcription, you know what I mean? Like actual note. I mean, I can, but I can't do it by sight. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I know the theory and everything behind it, so I can figure it out if I have enough time, but I can't sit and sight read it. But I'm in the middle of starting a new band and recording project that's all bossa nova, and have been going out of my mind for the last couple of months, just playing this stuff over and over and over and over again. And in fact, we talk about scores, and I know Quint is somebody who's dealt with pain in his arms and legs and everything. And I just got this this is my classical guitar. I had this made when I was living in South America, and it's really, you can maybe see from there, it's very, very deep. It's 4 inches at the heel and 4.5 inches at the foot. It's super deep. And this is what I've been playing, and my shoulders ache. I mean, I can barely reach above my head because of reaching around the guitar. So this puts it in the proper position. Like if you were a classical guitar player, you sit on here and it sits right.
Oh.
And it's about 1,000 times more comfortable to play. And it was $30 on Amazon.
You know, it's funny you say that because my dad was kind of the one who got me into playing, and he was always a classical guitarist. I mean, that was my dad's thing. And he's a little bit older than you guys. He's in his early 70s now. But he's got the shoulder problem, too, where he can't play an acoustic for very long. And so he finally came to me and was like, I think I might want to try an electric. So me and my dad finally went electric guitar shopping. You know, I've been buying them for 30 years, and he finally got interested. And so we did get him his first electric guitar. It's a thin line Gretsch. So it's you know, still very acoustic. It's like a full hollow body, but that's what he's been playing because he can't get his arm around the classicals for a long period of time anymore. So anyway, that's all it took for my dad to decide to play an electric.
I'm more like 3 chords in the
bass.
Yeah, exactly.
A is A. I don't give a shit about your C diminished 1913 augmented flat 7th chord. You can shove that where the sun don't shine.
Well, you know, and that is, we talk about that. It's like you can't really say what the chord is until the bass player plays what the bass player is going to play, because that kind of determines it.
So on that note, Quint, why don't you tell us about how you got into music journalism? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think Tim's trying to keep us on track.
Keep us, that's your job.
It's pretty sad when I'm the one trying to keep us on track.
You see, it's bad when you have 4 people with ADHD in the room. Right. If you want me to, I'll answer that question, and I want to keep you guys focused as well. The way Gig Mag is, if I'll just kind of the way I ended up in music journalism, or the way Gig Magazine came about, was a combination of factors. The first thing that happened was I made a booklet on how to record with my brother, Guy, who has a recording studio in Utah, Rosewood Recording. And this was like when I was like, I don't even remember if I was 18 or 19 or 20. I don't remember. But I made this stupid little book and photocopied it, like how to do, I think it was like how to do bounce recording, like how to bounce from cassette to cassette or something. And then we had like pictures of how to record microphones. And I put an ad in like Circus Magazine and Cream Magazine and sold a few of them. But that kind of got my interest. So I had this interest before I actually got into journalism. And then I went ahead and got a degree in journalism and then started looking at just having an entrepreneurial spirit. And I, just got some money together from my dad and my wife's uncle. And that led to some other financing from a family friend, a guy named Wally Hunt, who helped kind of seed the first, second or third issues. My dad and my uncle kind of seeded the first issue, and then it just kind of took off from there. I had a partner who, Bill Evans, you may not even know this, but I did have a partner early on, and we parted ways, and it was kind of a hard situation. It was
I did
kind
not
of one
know
of those,
about that.
It was a kind of a sweat equity thing where, you felt like one person wasn't, able to contribute the sweat equity necessary. And, so I bought him out, and it was kind of painful. Because he was a good friend, and actually I still am in touch with him. We kind of reconciled a little bit, but yeah. So I don't want to take all the credit for it, but it came from prior to that. I had written for my senior project in my journalism program. I wrote the book that eventually became the book, that Bill and I finished, 20 years later, called Making Money, Making Music. And I shopped that around, and then I kind of had a deal and didn't have a deal. And then when that fell through, then we took me and my friend Bill Current put this together and created a magazine. In fact, just the other day, I'm on Orangethorpe Avenue in Anaheim, and I drove by the Yamaha headquarters where I went in and pitched. And I think it was I don't remember you may remember his name, the guy who was at Yamaha, I don't remember his last name, Ken or something. And it's like I went in there and pitched, and it's like if there was like 3 companies that like believed in it, and if they hadn't, I went in and had this stupid demo. It was so embarrassing. I think back at it now, and I went to this guy's office, and I had a pitch, and it's like if those 3 companies, Yamaha, I don't remember what the other 2 were, but if they hadn't done it, then it would have fallen flat in its face right away. Well, there was the other thing. I had actually worked in Hollywood for magazines. There was a magazine called On Location. I worked for a music video magazine called Optic Music, Optic Music, kind of startups and some other. So it wasn't like I just started a magazine out of the blue. I'd worked, in the industry. I'd written for Mix Magazine. I'd written for Recording Engineer and Producer. So I kind of knew, and not that I had a big name, but I wasn't like just totally out of the blue. I kind of knew there was a niche between the professional recording magazines and the consumer magazines from a positioning standpoint. And that's why when I went in and said that was the pitch, it's like there's all this high-end stuff, but there's nothing for like the working musician. And that's what what worked. And a few years later, I used the same model to launch my second magazine, which was for recreational hockey players. It's the same exact pitch, It's just for a different niche.
Right. Well,
so that's how I got into it.
You mentioned that.
And then the third magazine was hockey players who play guitar. No, just kidding.
Yes.
Sorry, that's more than you think. But you mentioned if a couple of companies hadn't gotten behind it, and I remember the early days of gig, and we'd get a new advertiser. It was a big deal. But I don't think in this age, everything's online now, and the cost of starting a new publication or whatever is basically almost zero. And at this point in time, but that wasn't the case back then. I mean, the money was a big deal.
No, it was a lot of money,
very
and the backers.
To start a magazine.
Yeah, and the backers were Wally Hunt and a few others were very instrumental in helping it and keeping it going. It was. You as you grow older, you realize the help that you had along the way, that you've been you're blessed with for a variety of reasons, including people like Herb Schiff, who decided to take a chance and rep the magazine, people like that, and some others, and so you realize you get a lot of help along the way. But at the core of that was a community of musicians that subscribed and kind of got it. And there's like Scott and then the writers and so forth.
I love that magazine. Bill knows.
Yeah.
I preach about that magazine whenever I can. I swear to God, that was the Bible for me for many, many years in many different bands that I had. And I brainwash people. I would Xerox copies of the magazine and give them the pages that I wanted them to read.
Well, and there's your downfall right there. Scott was pirating it. I was going to say if you need an autographed copy, I know a guy, but apparently Scott was the downfall, so he probably won't get that.
I have all the copies. I saved because when I subscribed, as many times as I could subscribe, I subscribed, and I saved every single issue, and they're in my office upstairs.
Yeah. Well, your collection might be better than mine. when I started at BYU, 20 years ago, that like the director of the commercial music program like tracked me down. He was like, "You're the guy that has Gig Magazine. That's like the Bible." It was really kind of fun that this random guy that I didn't know. And every once in a while, I do run into people that do remember it.
Do you remember who tracked you down? Because I was in that program originally.
Well, yeah, it was. Oh my gosh, you're going to put me on the spot here. I'll remember. If you were in the program, you should remember his name.
I was going to follow that question up with all your time at BYU. What is your favorite thesis you've ever had to work with?
Well, back in the day, there was a student who wanted to see how the gamification of playing guitar could help a guitar company market their products.
A Guitar Hero and Rock Band, that would be correct.
That was correct,
yes.
Yeah.
Hey, just for people who don't know this, Quint was on my thesis committee in graduate school, and that is where the connection to Bill came about, because Bill was working with Live to Play, and they were trying to figure out how to move online from print, and we're kind of looking for like a unpaid intern for some help, and Quint introduced us, so there you go.
Yep, Quint called me up and said, "I've got this guy. He's one of my students, and he's a good writer, and he wants to do some stuff that's music-oriented," and that's where it started.
And then Scott and I had to share bunk beds at NAMM. Full story,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
We're not going to live that one down.
Now, I'm waiting till we do it again. I mean...
The other thing I want to point out is just what's so funny about this is you guys are... I have to make a confession here because you guys are kind of gearheads, and I have never been a gearhead. I had the opportunity to learn how to be a recording engineer, with my brother, and it bores me to death. All that studio stuff just bores me to death. Gear bores me. So we go to when I was working for Mix, and even when we were gig, it's like I go around. I can say this now at these trade shows. You go around and it's like, "Hey, we've got the Frabber Snabber Snabber and the new Frabber Snabber Snabber," and I just want to and I did my best. I mean, I don't even like guitar gear. It's like I have one bass, I have one guitar, one electric, one acoustic, and it's like I'm just not into. Like the whole, I can barely run a compressor limiter, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I mean, I can run Pro Tools and, enough to do a demo. I'm just like, it's just that whole thing, just like I don't get it. It's almost as foreign as music is to me.
So the funny thing with this is back for Christmas last year, I got myself a Hofner bass, one of Paul McCartney Hofner violin basses, and Quint's been playing Hofners for quite a while in his band, and so of course I had to text him, and I was super excited because I went and found the Labella flat wounds that Paul McCartney uses that they make specifically for him, and I was like, "Quint, I found these strings. What do you use on yours?" And he's like, "I don't know if that's my brother." So there you go. I can attest to that's true.
my middle brother Mark, well, he had I don't know if he sent me. He told me to get whatever the flat round wounds. I can't remember, but yes, it's so funny because I call they're not those, but anyways. So that's my big confession I'd like to make. On the show tonight is that yes, I can run a mixer and run this way, but anything beyond that, I just like it's the music kind of a thing.
Well, I guess we can just we just killed the recording because everything's over. We don't have anything to talk about
it's
now.
Like
so
the show.
Just kidding.
Yeah, right.
No, I can.
Well, I was
you guys are looking
curious.
at me like I killed the cat.
No, I'm actually curious about so what you're doing with your band now. Which, by the way, I believe you're playing in my farm town this weekend, if I'm not wrong.
I am playing in Spanish Fark.
My farm town.
Spanish Fark. Okay.
There you
go. Yeah, we're playing in Spanish.
Anyway,
Spanish Fark.
how did that all come about?
Well, when I moved to Utah and started teaching at BYU, we were talking about pain earlier. I have to point out here that I did stop playing guitar. I barely touched my Rickenbacker for about 8 years because of some surgery I had on my hands, and my arms kind of went out on me. So I literally, my arms hurt to play. But anyways, I started, when I was back in Michigan getting my PhD, I started writing again after really writing in earnest, really writing and studying the songwriting as truly as an artist, and studying, song form and songwriting theory more from a Nashville perspective. And just because that's where the storytelling, is based, a lot of it nowadays. And so, I've been to Nashville a few times while I was living in Michigan and starting to, write and pitch songs and stuff like that. So when I moved to Utah, I found a guy named Jeff Hinton on the internet, and it was like, man, this guy can sing, like really sing. He kind of sounds like a cross between John Denver and James Taylor. And I just called him up, and I said, and he had actually written a little book about songwriting. And so here I was, someone who had been a music entrepreneur, and he had kind of, it's like, here's a guy who wrote a booklet on how to write a song or whatever. And so we kind of hit it off and started writing, and then we started pitching to some of the Christian, we did some demos and started pitching to some of the Christian labels in Utah, the local kind of quasi semi-gospel Christian labels, and got signed. It was just like a side hustle, which it still is. And I'm just saying, and so then that led to, my brother-in-law, who I played, in bands with on and off since when I was in college, Jim Hollister, and then Ron Saltmarsh we hired to do strings on our first album, and he had been in Nashville and lived there for 10 years, and had a track record, and so he kind of ended up in the band, and so it's the four of us. So we've done 7 albums now over the last 17 years or something like that, and we gig out a lot. And we just, no one's buying CDs anymore. We can talk about the business of music. I would love to talk about that because that's fascinating. But, for example, we could do up to, anywhere between $800 to $1,200 in CD sales at a gig. And just,
wow, that's really good.
It really, and this isn't a gig with 50 people at it. This is a gig with like 300 people at it, right? If not more. Outdoor summer concert is what we tend to do. But we've done, our highest CD sales was about $1,200, and a good night was $800 or $900. And now we do, $200, and we skew to older audience, we skew older, but, and then we make,
and if you didn't skew older, that $200 would be 25 cents.
Right, exactly. And, but at the same time, it's been replaced by, $50 on streaming. So that's what I think's sad about, not that, we've played the social media game or the digital game correctly. I'm just saying we had a model that could reproduce itself, where we could earn money, over and above the gigging, but we would put money away, and then we would generate money to produce our new albums, and granted, we're doing it in home studios and stuff like that, but still there was significant costs involved. Our first 4 albums, we were signed to a label, but then as things went on, it was like the label was like, well, we're not making money off CDs anyway either, So I just think that's other people have taken advantage. I think the same amount of money's out there, it's just shifting around. But I just think that's kind of a bummer, where now it's like, we just have to charge more, and we do fewer gigs just because we can't, we can't make the money or a little bit of the money on the back end on CD sales like we used to. So that's
what you just said about
the
about the money shifting around, I think is really right. I mean, and the way it's shifted around though is it's concentrated at the upper end. I read a thing one time. It's like 0.1% of the artists are making 90% of the money.
Yes.
And everybody else, by the time you get down to the lower 50%, they're making nothing.
Yes, and that's why a lot of the musicians who, for a period of time, were in bands, and I'm talking about the local musician, who's earning a living, and now a lot of those types, it's had an effect in the studio as well, because people are recording at home, so the number of studio musicians required, aren't, and that's tied into sampling and all that kind of stuff, and sampling instruments, but. The point is a lot of those guys who used to make a living as a studio musician / live player, and I'm not talking about the big time people, I'm talking about the local, independent musician. They have to, there are guys like teaching lessons, and you go, my gosh, that guy, you go, wow, this person's teaching lessons again. I know someone that's touring with, someone's doing it more for fun, but this guy's like literally touring the world with a major act, and he's teaching lessons mostly for fun, but it's just an interesting market. So, which is one of the reasons, people like us have day jobs.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I have a good friend down in Vegas who started taking guitar lessons from a guy who was a touring guitarist for LA Guns for like 20 years. So toured the world, was endorsed by BC Rich, all kinds of stuff, and now he's teaching lessons in Vegas. And he still does a bunch of studio work down at LA. Like, he'll go down and do stuff for people and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of how he makes sense to me, is teaching lessons, where it's for like 20 years he was playing in a huge rock band all over the world.
You've had to broaden what you do to survive, and that's part of. And I'll put a plug in for my other. It's in some ways it's been very, Gig Magazine was very kind of emotionally fulfilling, but almost more so was when, with my brother and another partner, Todd Sorensen, we started our drum loop company, back in about 2005, and went, and technology's changed, and it's, that's not selling like it used to, but it's just fun for a period of time to had, we had like, and again, I apologize for not being able to rattle off names, but, Grammy-winning producers and, people like Randy Bachman, buying our stuff and calling us up, and, we go backstage. I went backstage with U2 because one of their side people used our stuff, and and I've had people call me up and say, this product really helped me write these songs, and. So Gig Magazine was really fulfilling, but this, in a different way, having Drums on Demand, which came from my own songwriting, was like, I don't like write. I hate drum machines. Remember I said I hated technology. I need something really simple. I want something I can just drag and drop and make a drum track, and for my songwriting, and that's what we did. And it went on to. We've grossed millions of dollars over a period of time as a side hustle. So that's been a fun, I'm trying to relate this back to the whole, being a musician or being a part-time musician or being a semi-professional musician, and having to, expand, what you do. And that's kind of what I did, because I knew and I think part of being a musician is knowing what your capabilities are and what you can do, and not being, like a clueless American Idol contestant, but knowing what your capabilities are, but still having a dream of being involved, in an industry that maybe you're not good enough to be at the top, but you can still enjoy being a part of it. And so that's what was really cool about having both Gig Magazine and Drums on Demand and Joshua Creek in a way.
But I think it's about finding a niche, and that's what
Right.
you really excelled at. Gig Magazine was about finding that niche. Hockey Player was about finding that niche.
Right.
Drums on Demand, to me, was the same kind of thing. At that time, I mean, now there's companies like Yurt Rock and things like that do the same kinds of things, and they have huge libraries and things like that. But that didn't even exist when you guys were doing that whole drag and drop. This is a verse, this is a chorus, these are bridges, here's fills, and being able to drag and drop that stuff and make it work, it didn't exist.
No, it didn't, and we spent $18,000 to get a patent, and who knows what we'll do with that, but it's we were doing it as a side hustle. If other people have done it full time, and when you do something as a side hustle, you can't focus on it like you need to. But yeah, I am amazed kind of the market out there. I'm still kind of scratching my head, but have other priorities as well. But it's again, I could rattle off some other. It's just the emotional payoffs. There's the monetary payoffs, but the emotional payoffs. Just fun stuff like the guys in Styx. A couple of them were using them, and just to be able to go backstage and. The people that you admired, because these are old guys, people that you admired as a kid, that you got to just help in some little way, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. That's a huge thing, having somebody that you looked up to tell you that that's something you've done. Affected them in some way, shape, or form is that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really fun. And the other thing I'll say is that that again, full circle with me as a teacher, as a faculty and teaching, journalism and marketing and advertising. It's kind of comes full circle to inspire younger people. Or help people, finish their master's thesis.
Some of those young people are starting to get kind of old now, but there's still the middle-aged guy in the call. No, I was going to say, I think Quint has some really good advice there with like understanding your limitations and understanding looking for like what your skill level is, say with music or whatever, and finding a way to use that and a way to make a career, make a side hustle or whatever. And the piece I was kind of laughing about there as you were saying that is I think the advice I got from my dad who, tried to work in the music industry in like the mid 70s and whatnot was, you're not going to be good enough to be a rock star, so go do something else and get a real job so you can buy lots of fun gear.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the path that I went down. but,
right.
But it was kind of funny because, I was just going to say it was really, for me, and once again going back to grad school with Quint and kind of learning about drums on demand and things like that, and getting introduced to Bill, where I kind of had that realization of like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be a rock star, but I can review gear, I can do videos on gear, I can now today with Bill and Scott put together a video or a podcast, or I don't know what we do, but I can talk about gear and record it, and we can send it out to people. But there are things you can do within your limitations where, I may just be a mediocre musician, but I can still talk about it and hopefully encourage other people to do something cool. So
I have made a career on mediocrity.
That's right. We are excellent.
Scott says that he's way better than he gives himself credit for.
Come on.
Well, that's now again.
I never really cared about being rich and famous. I just always wanted to be a working musician, and
so
that's it. That's what I've done my entire life. My dad wanted me to be a plumber,
right?
But, I wasn't in the cards.
And I'll just keep talking about the specialization thing or niche, and it musically as time has gone on, especially when you do music as a side hustle. You only have so much time, and part of my side hustle thing is I'm just ADHD. It's like I can't just sit around and write. So as time's gone on, in my musical career, I've specialized, mostly becoming more of a lyricist. I mean, there are songs that, I write, but most of the time I write the lyrics for my partner in crime, my partners in crime. and I provide, lyrics, and then they take and write these beautiful melodies. But sometimes I bring the melody to the table, period, or a whole song that's halfway written. But I only have so much time, and talent. And I found that, like, the lyrical storytelling is like what I really enjoy doing. And so that's what I contribute, and I contribute to fiddling around with video and stuff like that now. But, a lot of the musical stuff, I don't, I play bass live, but I'm not good enough. I don't play in the studio. I'm not good enough. Like, there's a million people better than me.
So you don't actually play on the records?
Not lately. The first few I played a little, but even the first few I didn't play very much. I just played a guitar here or there. So yeah, it's kind of like the Wrecking Crew a little bit. Now, but again, it's like that was the other thing that I learned from Jeff when I started writing with him. It was like, hey, let's record. And he's like, I don't play guitar in my demos. I hire people. And I was like, oh, you do that? And it was like, yeah. And it was like, suddenly I went from these hokey demos to these really killer demos, and then doors started opening. And so that just kind of focuses on hey, you know what? I'm a writer more so than a performer. Now, live is different. I can sing on key, I can harmonize, I can do all that stuff really good, and I can play. I can fake the bass. But I'm not a real musician, and I've never been a real, garage band, meaning the old version, meaning of garage band, not the product, but
right.
a pop rock, 80s rock band where you just go, dun, 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 I'm through right now.
E for so long.
Yes. I mean, I recently learned just a little bass lick, and it's like I'm just so thrilled with myself. I can't even fetching read tab.
I hate tab. I'm morally opposed to tab on every level.
So the funny thing is, I learned to play because of tab, but it was like crappy online tabs, because those started out when I was in high school. The original Olga, the online guitar archive.
That's right.
Yeah.
Olga.
Where they were like the terrible tabs that people made. That's how I learned to play. Was downloading those. I probably have in a box somewhere down here. They used to give us like an allotment of paper in the high school library, and I would go and use my allotment every term and just printing off crappy tabs off the internet. I probably still have some here somewhere.
These are my charts now. You can't even see it.
I see a bunch of white.
I can't remember anything now.
I have seen Scott's charts. Scott and I have played in bands together, and I have seen his charts, and
turn
they
down
make
the
sense
contrast,
to him, and they work really well.
But anyway, so I think it's still not going to work.
Anyway, my charts are just really the arrangement. And then I'll write in notes to cue my memory. Oh yeah, I gotta play this. But if somebody else looks at it, they'll be like, "Well, this is just a bunch of notes on the paper. Yeah. How do you play this song?"
And I think
for my chart, you gotta know. You have to know the song, and then the chart makes sense.
Yes, and that's kind of the shorthand I've made for the originals and the few covers that we do. It's like I have my own little version. I make recordings of my fingers so that we do a Christmas show or 5 or 6 Christmas concerts every year, and I forget all the songs, and I have to. I mean, that's just a whole fascinating thing. You see these guys in concert, and what's the story? I heard Tim McGraw being interviewed, and it's like they feed his lyrics through his inner ear monitors. He has a guy telling him his lyrics. He doesn't use a floor monitor. A video monitor.
It's funny you mentioned Tim McGraw.
We all use iPads now.
I know. We all use iPads.
I was going to say my thing I was going to start off today's episode with, but I already talked about it with Scott for a long time, is I went to my first country concert ever, and it was Tim McGraw. My wife made me go.
Okay.
And I actually kind of had fun, even though the sound was awful. But he surprisingly put on a great show. So there you go. That was my my new update for the week. We didn't do updates. That was my fault because I kicked things off. But anyway, there you go. We're up to almost the hour mark. So probably getting close, like wrapping up the next 10 minutes. And now I'm giving the update of
well,
mine.
I want to make sure that we we've talked about gig and drums on demand, and we mentioned hockey player a little bit, and Quint's band now and band for a long time, Joshua Creek. But you had another band.
I have to be careful. I have to give credit. I was part of a band that was my brother Mark, and then a guy named Dave Krenko, who wrote all the songs or most of the songs. Who's just an incredible writer. And the short story there recently is my brother Mark was digging through some filing cabinets, and this was a power pop band from the 80s. Kind of we got played called on KROQ. By the way. Yeah, called the Bings, as in Bing cherries. Anyways, and we had printed a 45, and then we did some other demos and did the whole shopping thing, and we were clueless, but whatever. But the songs are really fun, kind of like New Wave Beach Boys is another term that we used for it. Like Beach Boys with power guitars, big, Marshall stacks kind of a thing. And anyways, my brother Mark found, dug up the 16-track masters. And we sent him, and then my middle brother's a musician. My oldest brother has a recording studio, and so we sent the tapes to Hollywood to have them baked and transferred to Pro Tools, and on and off over the last year and a half, we've gone into the studio with my brother and been mixing them. So we're gonna release them to digital or release them to vinyl. So it's just so fun to take these tapes that were 16 tracks from the 80s and to remix them using today's technology, but still, remain true to the original sound. And what's hilarious is this: there's only fetching 16 tracks. They're so easy to mix. It's like 16 tracks. How long can it take? So I've been working with my brother
Long
Guy.
time, man.
Yeah, and he's been so kind to help us out, and we're supposed to finish here in the next couple of weeks, but we've been saying that for months now. But the idea is to either, depending on what's going on, is to do this vinyl. We never did a full, true release, so it's fun 45 years later. To be working on these tracks, and they're very strong songs and really strong harmonies. I can't remember if I sent you anything, Bill or Tim. Oh, I think I did send you a couple things.
No, I have. I'd love to hear. I mean, I remember you playing.
Yeah, you remember the original.
I think I have the Bing's 45.
Yeah, and let me tell you a funny story about that. Is you can. We find them for sale. There is a niche. Again, back to the niche thing. There are people who collect weird new wave bands from the 80s on vinyl, and so we seal that Savior. If you haven't gotten rid of our 45, it sells from anywhere between $50 to $75 on these collector sites. Like I can go on right now and find it for sale at a collector's site. So it's just funny to have a band that I've had people call me up looking for, like, we found this photo, where's the record? And it was like, well, that wasn't a record, that was just a demo tape. But I've had collectors contact me at my day job looking for paraphernalia from this band. Not that we were famous, but there's this collectors of something about the 80s and California and the Sunset Strip, and so we were part of that thing. And so again, it's just funny to something you were involved in that really didn't go anywhere, to see people are like paying $75 for a single, and I've got like 7 of them in my drawer, and I'm like, we're gonna save it for my retirement. So that's
This has got me wondering if my dad's 45 that he made back in the mid 70s, if it's worth anything, because I know he's got a bunch of copies of that never sold.
You know,
I should go look into it.
You should never know. But so really the reflection is, it's for someone who wanted to do something in music and having some people who helped me along, I've been very, even though I never got rich, per se, I've been very blessed and have some fun, war stories to tell. And some of you have been involved in those.
Yeah, if we get to play
there you
music
go.
and people pay us money, or even just get to listen to us playing music, that's way.
Well, and that's again one of the beauties of the industry is it's changed. Is the barrier to entry has come down, and now anyone can make music. It's like talking. It's the same things happen to journalism. The journalism industry is destroyed because everybody can do it. It's the same, but the beauty of it. And that's the beauty. The beauty of it, especially for gear manufacturers, is they can make this stuff, and it doesn't matter if you're famous or not. It doesn't matter. What matters is if you enjoy making music with the instruments that you've bought. That's all that matters. No, in the end, when we're all dead, no one's going to care if you were famous. Or in the hereafter. Let's say. I'm just saying. It's like what comes with you.
Tim when he edits my stuff. I don't know how to write. Just fix it. Here you go.
There you go. So that's the beauty of it. Is these are just tools for us to express ourselves, and that's what's awesome about it. And that's why it's awesome. Clueless people can make a podcast now. People like us.
Yeah, like as we have proven.
I was going to say, I think the only thing I've learned today is that my only talent in the music industry, is buying stuff that I don't have time to use. But I'm happy you guys are doing cool things.
There you go. Good summation.
Well, there you go. Well, I think that's actually a pretty good point to wrap this all up, y'all. So there you go. I mean, this has definitely been the most focused episode we have done yet.
You do a good job.
I will take full credit for none of that. It was all Quint.
I want to add one thing.
It's like he showed up prepared.
I know. Well, I'm a good talker because that's what I do. Even though I hate gear, I do like software. I mean, I'm here in LA, like doing After Effects training. After many of years of knowing in design and Photoshop and Illustrator, I do like software. So, end of story. I don't want to sound like I'm a total Luddite, because I'm kind of the software guy in some ways, and I love making stuff in software. So,
it's above my head.
Alrighty then.
Great.
What was that, Scott?
It's above my head.
Yes, above his head.
I can use it.
yes.
I can't make it.
Exactly.
And Scott does more with a $60 copy of Reaper than I do with $1,200 worth of virtual instruments and Logic and more plugins than you can get.
Well, and that's a funny thing, Quint. I don't know if you heard. It was probably our first or second episode we did of this old guys talking about stuff. But we went through like the basic setups for recording, and Bill and I are both like, yeah, for like probably $200 you can get started, but we have thousands of dollars invested in stuff that we probably don't use. And then Scott's like, I spent like $60 and I do demos or I record in my house and I send it to people and make money. So
that's right. There you go.
There is something to be said for that. There are people who buy and there are people who do, and some of us are people who just buy stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, I can't afford to buy
gentlemen.
All right.
Well, let's wrap this up. It's been fun. Good to talk to everybody.
Great
Any
to talk to everybody.
final words of wisdom from anybody?
Quint, I'm going to try to come to your show this weekend, since it's like a 3-minute drive from my house.
Yeah, come see us. It'll be a fun show.
Now I'm going to be really paying close attention to your bass playing to see if you play it right compared to the albums or not. But
no, yeah, it's.
How you didn't play that right?
It's a low res representation of what's on the albums.
He's faking it.
No, I don't.
I know some people. I'm in the ballpark.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This housekeeping.
Oh.
When we stop the recording, Quint, don't close the window because we have to make sure it finishes uploading.
I think you were supposed to wait until we said, okay, we're done recording for this week.
Yeah, I know. We're supposed to say
But hey, listeners,
Okay.
welcome into the behind the scenes. This is where the magic
right.
happens.
Of using software.
You can edit
Okay, gentlemen.
before.
See ya.
Okay, I'm going to stop
Bye.
recording. Adios.